Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. Journey Forth into the Light. It's the new collection of devotionals written by Lavender. And we're going to talk all about it right here on the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm joined by the author Kay. Kay, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being with me.
Thank you.
I'm really interested to learn all about Journey Forth into the Light. Kay, can you tell me about it?
Well, like you said, it is a devotional, and it was based on a dream, pretty much on a dream that I had, which was in 2013. And did you want me to explain why I wrote the book? And, I have always kept journals. I've also kept a dream journal. And I thought, well, one day I'd like to have some of this published. But, as life goes on, it gets kind of hectic when you get married and you start having babies. So the journal's kind of laid on the back burner, so to speak. After I had this dream in 2013, I began to go through some very trying times in my life. I felt that this dream was a prophetic dream, especially since there was an angel in the dream. And I had had many similar dreams also that has proven to be prophetic. So in March of 2015, I lost my husband. And at the same time, my son was getting a divorce, and I had to take my granddaughters in and send them to school. They lived with me for 3 years until 2018. And then my son remarried and took the girls to live with him. So I got back into reading, and I got back into studying the Bible and writing, of course. It just seems like I was in a deep, dark forest for so long. But I've come to the place where I think I can see the light streaming in. So that is really what it's about.
Kay, how long of an endeavor was this for you?
Well, I had most of it in the journal. A lot of these stories I had recorded in the journal. I guess I'd been working on it for maybe a couple of years. I didn't know when I would get it published. I didn't know who to call, actually. And then Christian Faith Publishing Company called me. After that, it didn't take me long at all because most of it was already written out. I just had to line it up and get it together and then put my 2 cents worth in.
So this is your first book then, Kay?
Yes, it is.
Oh, congratulations. What was that day like whenever you finally got your first copy in and you finally got to hold Journey Forth and your name's on the cover and everything? What was that like?
Well, it's hard to explain. It was just fantastic, really. It was fantastic. It was a dream come true. A dream come true.
And now that you are a published author, Kay, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
I think it's something that I've been wanting to do, and I think I'm being led to do this. I really do. I feel like the Lord is leading me in this direction.
Would you say you feel led then to write more after this, do you think?
Yes, I do.
Kay, a lot of first-time authors, they can be really surprised and maybe overwhelmed at how much is involved in the publishing end of things. So what did you find the most challenging part of that for you?
Well, the waiting, for one thing, but it went kind of smooth, actually. But it's probably just the waiting, and I know it takes time. But as far as any challenges, it seems to be coming together really well. Everything's going rather smooth.
That's great. I'm sure this was quite the learning experience for you, Kay. So do you have any advice now that you could offer to others who are about to embark on this journey too?
The only thing that I would say is to go for it and just hold on because, it's something that it is an experience.
Absolutely. Well, I think these devotionals are going to bless a lot of readers. Again, the title of the book is Journey Forth into the Light. It's written by Lavender, published by Christian Faith Publishing. So Head to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, or also down the street at your local bookshop, and you'll be able to pick it up. Okay, thank you again for coming on the show and talking with me about this. I had a really nice time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I've had a nice time, too.
The Religious Divide. It's the new book by Larry Squyres, and it studies Catholicism and Protestantism. And I'm going to learn more about it. The author, Larry, is sitting with me now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Larry, welcome. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Larry, can you tell me what readers will find in The Religious Divide?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's been several things that have always kind of been in the back of my mind, kind of where did Lent come from, and where did the ideal of souls being immortal after you die come from? So I kind of decided to dive into that and research it and kind of answer some of my own questions.
What kinds of readers do you think would be really interested in this?
Well, really, anybody that's Catholic or Protestant, I think, would find a lot of the information within the book very interesting and very informative.
Can you go back and think specifically maybe about what sparked the idea, what got you going, wanting to write this book?
Well, a few years ago, I wrote a book that was called Why Believe in Bible Prophecy, and I kind of went through the end times and the information that was in Daniel and in Revelations. And as I was researching a lot of that information, I would see other things come up that didn't necessarily go along with what I was writing in that book at that time, but was things that I wanted to learn about later.
And to me, I would think with the research and everything going into this, that this would be a book that would take a long time to write. Is that the case?
It really did. It took me probably about a year and a half to actually research everything that I was looking at. And then about probably another 6 or 7 months to really put everything together and to start putting ideas to paper.
Then there's the publishing process, and a lot of authors can be surprised about how much is involved in that. Larry, what did you find the most challenging part about the publishing end?
I guess probably learning the ins and outs of how the book setting goes and how the printing process goes is to making all the words fit on the pages and just kind of getting everything into the book where it would look uniform and just right.
And then that day finally comes, and Larry, you open up your mailbox, and there's your first physical copy of The Religious Divide. What were you thinking or feeling then?
I was really excited. I had actually gotten several copies that were delivered, and I actually had some really close friends around the United States, actually, that I sent additional copies to and kind of asked them to read it and to kind of give me their feedback on it. I actually had one person that sent me an email back and said that his church group were actually going to do an in-depth Bible study of everything that I had wrote about in my book.
What are the chances that we're going to see more books from you in the future?
Well, I've got a couple of ideas floating around right now. I just got moved into a new house, so I'm kind of putting things away, but at the same time, I've got some ideas that are formulating, and I'm just kind of trying to narrow down what I want to focus on and start working on next.
And being a published author, Larry, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
I guess being able to see my name in print, it's something I never dreamed of ever doing. Although I had a teacher in high school that always kind of pushed me in that direction, I never thought that I would ever do anything like that.
And the whole thing can be quite a learning experience. So is there anything you might have picked up along the way, Larry, that you could throw out there as advice for aspiring authors?
Don't give up. No matter if you get bogged down or if you get that memory block or that writer's block, just work through it. Don't put it to the side. Continue to work on it. It'll come together. It just takes a lot of perseverance.
You mentioned writer's block. Is that something that you have to deal with?
Oh, I do. I usually have to get up and leave the computer, or if I'm at the library and I'm doing some research, I may get up and go outside and walk around for 10 or 15 minutes and just kind of think about what I've got going on and how I want to approach it.
Oftentimes, a lot of us who like to write, we're also big readers. Larry, what kind of a reader are you?
I'm a real book nerd. I read everything from Westerns, fantasy, science fiction, history, you name it. If it's something that sounds interesting, I'll pick it up and read it.
I love it. Well, I know a lot of readers will definitely be blessed by this book. Again, it's titled The Religious Divide. It's written by Larry Squyres, published by Covenant Books. So find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or even down the street at your local bookshop. Larry, got to thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about the religious divide. I had a nice time.
Well, thank you again for having me, and I really appreciate the time.
I'm joined right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable by author Susan Popovic. Susan, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you, Susan, and it's really exciting. You have a new book out titled How to Live a More Blessed Life, According to the Greatest Sermon Ever Told. Susan, can you tell me all about this?
Well, it is based on the Sermon on the Mount. It's found in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus preached, many lessons, encouraging listeners, to love their enemies, forgive others, care for the poor, turning the other cheek when insulted. So included in the book are questions for the readers to kind of dig deep in their own soul to discover how they would react. If Jesus says, turn the other cheek, how would you feel to turn the other cheek when you're insulted? It's not an easy thing for people to do, but something that we could all learn. Imagine how many wars and senseless killings would be alleviated if we could learn something what Jesus asked us to do.
I love it.
Many Christians are Christians in name only, because I read through the sermon since I was, young, just read it. I thought I knew everything till I started and I enrolled in Wheaton and started writing term papers. And when you do in-depth study of something, it's like, wait a minute, I don't know everything. You find out how little you know about something so common.
You're right, there's a big difference between agreeing with something, like agreeing with what the Bible says, or actually living it out.
Yes. It's just not being a passive Christian. It's taking action and taking action to get rid of some. Also, these 3 chapters, very powerful. People don't even realize that they could be prejudiced against somebody with a different color, for example. You can answer questions, on the sermon because we don't even know the biases we grew up in. Sometimes you got to dig deep in your subconscious, like, how do I really feel about that? Am I making the wrong assumption based on the color of the skin or whatever situation? We think we know everything. Then find out, we got to really dig, see how we would react to some things. How would we help another person, for example? What would we do for another human being? And not just say, well, I'm a Christian, I go to church on Sundays. It's like you have to really take action with your faith.
Susan, can you go back and think about how you were inspired, where you got the idea to sit down and start writing this book?
Well, I started writing Bible studies for my church, several years ago, maybe over 7 years ago. And then I realized that people were coming from other churches to come to the studies, and they were saying, well, you should get this out to others who cannot come to the study. So when I was doing a study in the Gospel of Matthew, I know everything that I've written for the Sermon on the Mount through, when I was at Loyola University and Wheaton College here in Wheaton, I realized I can get all the information I gathered and put together a great book based on the sermon, a study on this. And basically, I just said, you know what, let me just not write a whole study on Matthew, but take out these 3 little powerful chapters and just do a precise study on that. I have a lot of written, but it's just hard to get it all published. I don't want to, I didn't publish. I've written it in churches we read, and I've given things out, but people just kept saying, you got to get this out to others because I can't make it to your studies.
So you've never been published before this one?
No, this is the first book.
Congratulations. That's such a big deal to get your first one out. Do you think there's more ahead of you?
Yes. Just doing another one in the stories, the parables of Jesus. Those are another thing that we just think, nice story. But I think Jesus is asking us, how would you respond to that? If you're going to be a follower of mine, are you going to just read the words? Or, you really have to follow what I'm asking you to do. I find myself, I'm starting with myself because that's where I was. I thought I knew everything, like I mentioned, till later. I realized, no, I've just heard the words. They came in, but I was in my comfortable life and have not done, a lot of the stuff that Jesus asked. So I start from my own experiences.
I know a lot of readers are going to be blessed by this book. Again, the title is How to Live a More Blessed Life, According to the Greatest Sermon Ever Told. It's written by Susan Popovic. It's published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can get it everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Susan, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me all about this book. I had a really nice time talking tonight.
Well, I did as well.
Author Melissa Garcia's new book, Why the South? Why Egypt? It shows readers how times of challenge and doubt can lead us closer to God. And the author, Melissa, is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. We're going to talk all about this book. Melissa, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell me all about Why the South? Why Egypt? What are readers going to find here?
Yeah, certainly. So my book is comprised between those who have had to face their down south Egypt moments physically, along with those who have had to encounter their down south moments metaphorically. Yet they've had the courage to overcome their darkest moments by the leading hand of God, and also how this all plays an important role in our lives as well, because we all have a great destiny that awaits us, but in order to discover the hidden gem behind having to walk through our down south Egypt moments, we must come to understand and accept the truth of the matter. And this is, without facing our most difficult seasons, we will not be able to carry the weight of all that God has for us to inherit. And what God has for us is filled with so much anointing. So with that being said, my book is not just inspirational, but it's also a manual for those who need guidance on how to overcome their greatest battles and become transformed by the word of God. And through my testimony of how Jesus rescued me through all of my difficulties, challenging and dark seasons, I believe this book will definitely help people know that God is who he says he is, and he is faithful, and he will fulfill his will in those who choose to put their trust in him.
What persuaded you to write this? Where did the idea come from?
One day, I was having my devotional time with God in prayer and reading his word when I heard the voice of God say to me, "You will write a book called Why the South? Why Egypt?" And my response was, how am I supposed to write a book about why the South and why Egypt when I know nothing about the South or about Egypt? And his response was, you will write the book and I will lead you the whole way. And I will give you my wisdom and knowledge. And I will be with you until this book is finished. And so, yeah, that's how it all began.
Wow. How long of a journey was this for you once you started it, clear up until it was published?
The book took me 3 years. And the reason for this was because I had to encounter my own down south Egypt moments while writing this book. I will say, however, there came a time when I stopped working on the book, not because I found it difficult or anything like that, but because I started working as a medical assistant. And let me tell you, when God has a plan for our lives, we can try and run from it like Jonah in the Bible. But one way or another, God will get our attention. And so one day I was going into work there and there was ice and snow everywhere. And the snow was covering the ice. And so I took a very heavy fall onto the ground.
Ooh.
And that caused to have really bad injuries that in turn caused me to have a couple of surgeries down the line. But one day I was praying, and I'm not going to lie, I was angry at God for losing my job. But it was in that moment when I cried out to God with all my heart. And remember, this was in 2021 throughout the pandemic. I heard God say to me, what happened to my book? And he said to me, you took your hands off of what my hands were on to place your hands on something my hands were never on. And it was in that moment where I understood my calling. And so I began typing away. And at times it was as if my hands were literally being led by the Holy Spirit. And by the time you knew it, 3 chapters led into 5 into 12. And soon after I had 16 chapters and I had the book, and I still can't believe it. But all I can say is God is faithful and God is true. And even though we have to face our down south Egypt moments at times, the good works that God has started in us, he is so faithful to complete it until the coming of Christ Jesus.
The title of it again is Why the South? Why Egypt? It's written by Melissa Garcia, published by Christian Faith Publishing, So go over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to find it. Melissa, it's been so nice talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Right now, here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, I'm joined by Sergio Garcia-Granados. Sergio, welcome. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you here.
The pleasure's all mine. Now, you've edited a new book that was written by Jorge Garcia-Granados, your grandfather. It's titled The Birth of Israel, The Drama as I Saw It. Sergio, can you tell me all about it?
My grandfather, Jorge, he was born in 1900 and died young in 1962. He was ambassador of Guatemala in Washington. And at that time, the ambassadors in Washington for Guatemala were also ambassadors to the United Nations. United Nations was very, very new then. It was a young institution. And he came to United Nations. And at that time, there was the question of the end of the mandates of Britain in Palestine. Palestine was what now is Israel and the West Bank. And they have this mandate was given by the League of Nations, which is the predecessor of the United Nations at the end of the war when the Turkish Empire was dissolved. And they gave mandates to each country, and one of the countries that participated, and one of them was England, who had the mandate of Palestine and Jordan and some other. So they had to finish it because that was the deal and the conditions. They gave the mandate in 1918 or 1919 at the end of the war, the first war. The English, they say, well, there was already a Jewish community and an Arab community in Palestine. They were not happy with each other. The Jewish community was very strong and more developed because they have introduced some new techniques in agriculture, and they existed, and there was a question to the English what they were going to do. So they passed the ball to United Nations. They said, we don't know what to do. They sympathized with the Arabs mainly because the interests of the English were linked to the Arab world. Remember, the Anglo-Iranian was an English company. And this was before the independence or the change of mind in Iran. And they say, okay, let's have United Nations decide. My grandfather was elected. There were 16 members of a commission who was going to investigate the question and go inside to Palestine and to Europe, where there was a big Jewish community at that moment with no country. And that's where the book tells her experiences, the experiences that he encountered. I researched everything, and there was some mistakes in dates and in names. Now it's everything up to date. And at that moment, he wrote what he saw. But that's what is the value of the book. That is a first sight of the problem, how it was solved, and all the intrigues and everything. I also worked on the language because I was surprised. I had worked in my grandfather's books in Spanish a couple of times that I edited also and published in Guatemala. But I realized that English has changed a little bit more, and I adapted it to the modern, and I make shorter sentences, the names, the dates, everything was really, I had to learn again the whole process and to make it readable and enjoyable.
And then that day comes, Sergio, and you open up your mailbox, and there is your first copy of The Birth of Israel. What was it like for you to hold this book for the first time?
Well, it was really exciting to see the work of my grandfather renewed and put anew, and the recognition of the work of this, not only my grandfather, but there were 16 people who were really past a very important decision, and how they worked together. And of course, they were not all of them agreed, but at the end, they decided to recommend the partition of Palestine and create a Jewish state alongside an Arab state. It was really exciting for me to see the book and realize something that I worked for over a year on it. Yeah.
Again, it's titled The Birth of Israel, The Drama as I Saw It. This is written by Jorge Garcia-Granados, edited by Sergio Garcia-Granados, and published by Newman Springs Publishing, so get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also at traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Sergio, thank you again for coming on here and telling me all about your grandfather and your great-grandfather. It was really fascinating. Thanks again.
Well, thank you very much, you, and thank you everyone for listening.
Sermons to My Children. It's the name of the new book written by Precious Ndlovu, and it's a collection of wisdom for the next generation. We're going to talk all about it here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Precious, is sitting right here with me. Precious, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Precious, can you tell me all about Sermons to My Children and what you've written about?
Yes, Sermons to My Children. This is actually my first book. I wrote this book being that I realized that I work a lot, and then my children go to school, and we kind of didn't have time to sit down and talk about important things in life. So this book is about some of the life lessons that need to be passed on to the children. It talks about real life situations. For example, it talks about identity. People go through a lot, and sometimes they lose identity and they suffer from identity crisis. So it is important for them to know how to identify themselves. And in this book, I did reveal that they were created in God's image and they are special. So they have to be aware is that they were not spoken into existence just like any other created thing, but they were created in a special manner.
Precious, who were the target readers you had in mind for Sermons to My Children?
The first target will be the children themselves or the young generation. This will provide important information as they go out and as they mingle with different people. The second group of people is our parents. For those who do not know what to tell their children, it serves as a guidance as to what they should actually be talking about.
Once you sat down and started on this book, Precious, how long of an endeavor was this for you, clear through publishing and everything?
It's been quite a journey because actually when I started this book, I wanted to just write down these important things for my own children. That's why when you look at it as a book, it's actually dedicated to my two daughters. So it took me time to publish it because I was kind of debating if I have to go public with this information or just keep it for my own children. So finally, I decided to make it public just in case somebody wants the same information. So it has taken me plus or minus 3 years to do that.
And a lot of new authors might be surprised about what's involved in the publishing end of things. Precious, what did you find the most challenging part of the publishing process for you?
Maybe the process itself, especially I think that this is my first book, going back and forth about things that needed to be done. Especially, maybe let me say to me it was the cover because I wasn't sure what to put on the cover of my book.
So when that day finally came, Precious, and there it is, your first copy came in and you got to hold Sermons to My Children for the first time, what kind of a moment was that like for you?
I was very happy. I was excited. I can't even find a word to describe it, but I was really excited.
And now, Precious, you're officially a published author. So to you, what's the most rewarding aspect of that?
Being able to show the knowledge that I have with the rest of the world.
When you look down the road, do you see yourself writing more books?
Actually, yes. I have started writing another book, but I won't say much about the new book right now.
And it can be quite the learning experience, publishing for the first time. So do you have any advice now that you could put out there for the aspiring authors who are listening?
Yes. Communication is actually the key. If you are publishing a book, you always have to keep in touch with the people you are working with and also listen to advice which they will be giving.
Well, there's a ton of wisdom in this book, and I think readers are going to get a lot out of it. Again, it's titled Sermons to My Children. It's written by Precious Ndlovu, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing. So pick it up everywhere, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Precious, it's been really nice talking with you here tonight. I appreciate you being here with me.
It was my pleasure.
There's a fresh perspective for learning how to establish financial well-being in the new book by Robert M. Donovan, MBA. It's titled, It Doesn't Matter What You Make. And we're going to find out all about this book and the audiobook edition. The author, Rob, is here with me now. Rob, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me.
Hey, thank you, Gorey. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. I'm curious about It Doesn't Matter What You Make. Can you tell me what readers and audiobook listeners will find here?
So this book is a book that basically shows that it doesn't really matter what you make. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to have a lot of money to establish yourself and to build financial independence. And the book just kind of breaks down just all of the stigmas and all of the false narrative out there that just kind of keeps people from reaching their financial freedom in life.
Did you have a specific target readership in mind for this?
Honestly, this book, I have a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 21-year-old at home, and all of them have read it. It's a simple, easy book to read. So realistically, anybody at any age, from kids to young adults to, couples, young families that are getting married, to even, those that are kind of getting closer to their retirement age, can kind of read this book. It's laid out in a real simple, easy to read process, and it kind of just hits all age demographics.
Rob, how did this book come about? What sparked the idea for it?
Well, this book got laid on my heart by God in November of 2022. I woke up one day and I started writing, and 2 weeks later, had the rough draft together and submitted it over to Christian Faith Publishing, and they jumped on it, and kind of was a whirlwind there from never writing a book before in my life to 2 weeks later having not only a rough draft put together, but also, an agreement with Christian Faith Publishing to kind of help bring this to the masses.
Well, that's wonderful. So it was really quick to write this, 2 weeks, like you said. Was it a quick publishing process as well?
Publishing process wasn't. So, you learn a lot and not really knowing what to expect on that. And publishing for the paperback book took about 12 or 13 months to do it. Then with Audible, took another about 12 months or so to kind of go through the hard copy of it there, or the paperback copy, and produce it onto Audible.
Have you ever done anything like this before when it comes to writing or publishing?
This was the first. Since then, we went live with one other book, and we actually have a release of a third that's coming out at the end of this month. But no, for this one right here, this was the first time going through it, and it was a pretty fun experience. So kind of tapped into that and kind of did some more.
Now, speaking of the publishing end of things, it can be really daunting for some first-time authors about how much is involved in that publishing process. So, Rob, what did you find the most challenging part of that end for you?
Honestly, the toughest part for me was trying to stay ahead of the publisher and trying to kind of come up with all of the information that they kind of really need to it. So thinking about it kind of going into, you think, well, I just got to write a book. And that's hard enough on its own. But then it's, okay, well, then you have to be involved with cover design. And then it's like, layout of the book. And then the back cover. And then the author. And all of these other types of things that if you've never done it before, there's big tasks there and big decisions you have to make that aren't really done overnight. So trying to figure out what it is that you want all of those things to kind of look, feel, and sound like was tougher than originally had anticipated.
Now, for the audiobook, Rob, what was it like for you whenever you heard your book as opposed to having read it that whole time?
Oh, that's an interesting experience. I didn't write it myself. We had a narrator do it. I wasn't quite ready to take the plunge to do that myself. If I did it again, I probably would attempt it just because, that's just another avenue to try to do another first. But just hearing it, I'm assuming it's probably kind of like what actors kind of think when they kind of see themselves up on the big screen. It kind of puts tingles up the back of your neck there. It's kind of like, wow, this is my work out here being published in this manner versus, sitting down and seeing it on paper, which you can kind of do on your own as you're working on it. And you can print out copies and drafts along the way. But hearing it was a different experience all on its own.
Well, I know that readers and audiobook listeners are going to get a lot out of this, and I encourage everyone listening to go check it out. Again, it's titled, It Doesn't Matter What You Make, written by Robert M. Donovan, MBA, and published by the Audiobook Network. So go on over to Audible or iTunes or Amazon, wherever you go normally to get your audiobooks, and you'll be able to find it. Robert, thanks again for joining me today and telling me all about this. I had a really nice time.
Hey, Corey, I definitely appreciate all your time, and hey, I look forward to doing one of these again in the near future.
Readers will get a look behind the scenes of medical realities in the new book by Gina Sanguinetti. It's titled Clock Out and Heal. And we're going to talk all about this book. Gina is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Gina, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with me.
Hi, Corey. Thanks for having me.
Well, the pleasure's all mine, Gina. I'm really curious to learn about Clock Out and Heal. Can you tell me about it?
I sure can. They are a collection of the Clock Out and Heal book. It's my collection of stories from behind the scenes of medical realities. But it also helps connect others who are not in the medical field. And they are stories of births, deaths of all age groups. We have stories of COVID-19 that are really quite behind the scenes. And we're not talking about COVID-19 as much now, but it was certainly something else when it was going on.
Mm-hmm.
It brings awareness to what we see and do and elevates our professions in the medical field. Now, I was told by people who read it, bring tissues, but didn't want to leave that type of feeling. I wanted to add something in my book, which there are chapters. One is of self-care. I am a fitness person. I love my health and I strive for great health. And I want everybody to do that as well. It's so important for me to get somebody aware of be healthy and be active, and it just adds to your life. And I'm growing older now. I have another birthday in a couple months, so it gets more important as you get a little older. And then there's a chapter of thank yous. That's very uplifting. I wanted to thank as many people as I could possibly think of for the services they do. For instance, in the medical field, or our police, our fire, our military. So I listed thank yous for just about everybody I could think of, because in these fields of service, selfless people are usually the ones that get into these fields. And selfless people, they do not look for thank yous, but they sure appreciate it when they get one.
Gina, what inspired this book? How'd you get the idea to write all this and publish it?
Well, it started about 12 years ago, and because of the stress of this job, I am a respiratory therapist, and I am actually going, it's going to be over 28 years now that I have been a respiratory therapist. And we were the ones that were really starting to get known because of the time of COVID. A lot of people didn't even know our jobs. But I could tell you, it is a stressful job. The whole bunch of jobs in the medical field is stressful. So what you do, you go into work, you do your job, you clock out, and you go home, and you can internalize a lot of the stress during your day. And I found that that's what I was doing. I really consider myself a strong person, and you kind of push those emotions aside a lot of the times. And then what? You get up the next day, and you go back to work, and you clock in again. You go through the same thing. You really don't release some of the stress, or maybe none of it, because I found that I started to journal because I'm thinking, boy, I don't talk to many people. We talk among us once in a while in the medical fields or either other fields. And you find that maybe you need a little bit more than that. So I started to journal a little bit, and I found that it was just making my emotions come out. I decided to put it aside, and here it was 12 years later. And I decided, let me just make this into a book. I hope it could help people. And that was one of my biggest goals of writing this.
Is this your first book, or have you done stuff like this before?
No, this is my first book, and it was interesting. And when you get to see the results of it, it does impact you. And when you hear other people's comments, which I've been hearing some, boy, I'm liking the feedback a whole lot of what people have to say. It's been very inspiring.
What a wonderful book. I know readers are going to love it. Again, this is titled Clock Out and Heal. It's written by Gina Sanguinetti and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also at traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Gina, it's been wonderful talking with you here tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
It was a real pleasure, Corey. Thanks so much. You're so easy to talk with.
The story of a father's resilience through heartbreaks and business struggles is in author James Russell Roundtree's new book, Love Misinterpreted. And we're going to talk about it here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Got the author, James, with me now. James, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for welcoming me to the show.
The pleasure's all mine. James, can you tell me all about Love Misinterpreted? What are readers going to find here?
Well, Love Misinterpreted, it came about my life story, struggling through college, marriage, disappointment with family members, church members, and I continue to fight through the struggles, and most time in our relationship, people get a misunderstanding of love. Some people, they hide their feelings, but they really don't let the other person know how they feel. So it can be a misunderstanding. It can cause complication in that relationship. It could be a father, a daughter, a sister, a brother, husband, a wife, co-workers, etc. I feel like most people would benefit from this book when they start reading it and see the struggles I went through and how I didn't let it stop me from getting my college education, starting my own business, and writing this book.
James, what sparked you to write this? Where did the idea come from?
Well, what sparked me to write it is that I experienced a lot of pain when it came to relationships. And most people tell you that they love you, but their action shows differently. And I came up with that title, Love Misinterpreted, based on people not being honest with the person. A person can tell you they love you, but if they're mistreating you, that's not real love. So it's being misinterpreted. So the word is a word that people really take seriously. They take it for granted. Being able to finish college and start my own business with struggles also. So it's a lot to it, a relationship, and we should never take it for granted in business. If we're trying to achieve something in life, we should take it seriously. My daughter, Asia, she inspired me to write this book, Asia Roundtree. She's my youngest daughter, and she's an entrepreneur. One day, I was going through some struggles, and she like, Dad, you could really write a book, I said, you know what? That might be a good idea. I can help somebody. And so far, I don't help a lot of people see something better in themselves since I wrote this book.
James, what kinds of readers were you speaking to here?
Well, because the book is dimensional, it can target all from 18 to 65 and older, because some young people struggle with college, finishing up college, and sometimes they want to drop out and they don't want to, go the extra mile to keep going. So my book talks about how I started college late in life and I achieved my bachelor's degree at 63 years old. So I didn't let my family life stop me from progressing. So there's people out there may want to give up their college education because of setbacks. So my book is to motivate young people or older people that had a setback in their early years and they couldn't go to college. But when they read this book, it'll motivate them that you can start all over again after a setback. So never give up.
Love that message.
Marriage. We know marriage is the most complicated entity on the planet. Many divorces are happening by the second. And my book inspires people that in relationship, don't give up on your relationship when it seems rough. Don't give up on your relationship. Find a solution to your marriage instead of just walking away. Because walking away, you could be losing a good person. We shouldn't take love for granted. And we should take every moment as being precious. So we shouldn't assume that our spouse like this, but our spouse may not like that. So we should be upfront and honest with our feelings. And then when we're not honest with our feelings, that's love being misinterpreted.
I know a lot of readers are going to be blessed by this book. Again, the title is Love Misinterpreted. It's written by James Russell Roundtree, published by Christian Faith Publishing. So head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or iTunes, or traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll find it. James, thank you again for joining me tonight, telling me about Love Misinterpreted and everything that went into it. I had a nice time talking with you.
I appreciate your time and everything. And I hope you have a wonderful day yourself.
Author B.R. Benson encourages readers to overcome their fears in her new book, Bonnie, the Seagull Who Wouldn't Fly. And we're talking about this book right now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Bonnie, is here with me. Bonnie, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell me all about Bonnie the Seagull Who Wouldn't Fly? What do readers find here?
They'll find a little girl seagull that was afraid to fly or swim because she got scared early in her young life, trying to compete with her older brothers. So she overcame this fear just by pure determination. Eventually, in the long run, she overcome it, and you will see Bonnie out there flying if you're out where seagulls are, probably trying to steal your French fries or your snacks.
What sort of readers were you writing for here, Bonnie?
Children mainly, probably from 4 to 5, maybe up to age 10. The ones that are impressionable, the children that might feel challenged or might understand what it's like to fear something and overcome something and want to get out there and try and be able to say, I did it. I can do this.
How did the idea for Bonnie the Seagull Who Wouldn't Fly come about? Where'd you get the inspiration for it, Bonnie?
Well, we live in Washington State, and where we live, it's up on the Olympic Peninsula. And if you look at the state, it's one of the peninsulas up close to Canada. And there's only 2 ways to get there, and that's a long drive around water, and the other's on a Hood Canal Bridge, which is a drawbridge. And one day we got stuck waiting for the bridge to open. And I was sitting there watching the seagulls play and fly around and dive in the water. And I thought, if I ever come back as a seagull, I am sunk, because I will not want to fly high and dive in that water and bob around, because I don't like heights and I get seasick. So that kind of prompted me to think about that. So that's what Bonnie was created from.
Have you ever done anything like this before when it comes to writing and publishing and everything?
Nope. Bonnie was my first writing.
Oh, congratulations. Did this take a long time for you to do?
Well, yes, because it took COVID to do it. When COVID hit, I had this and another book in my mind. I had outlines done, and I said, well, I can't do anything else. I'll write my books. So I wrote them.
And when you finally got your first copy in of Bonnie the Seagull Who Wouldn't Fly, and you got to hold this, it's your first book, your name's on the cover and everything, what kind of a moment was that like for you?
I cried with happiness. Actually, my daughter opened it. I was afraid to. I just couldn't believe it. It was something I've always wanted to do with my life, was write a book, a children's book. And she did it for me. And she said, here, look, Mom. And I held it and I cried. So it was a dream come true.
What are the chances that we might see another from you in the future?
Well, I have another one that's coming out with Bonnie. That's inside a Christmas snow globe. And then I have another one that's in publishing now. So that one will be coming out probably later this year.
And when it comes to the publishing end of things, there's a lot involved in that. Bonnie, what did you find the most challenging part of that part of things?
All of it. I didn't know there was so much to do. Oh, my goodness. The illustrations, putting words to matching words to the illustrations. It was amazing. Everything. And then picking the covers. And I just couldn't believe it. My hat goes off to any author, especially these big-time guys, you know. Just really amazing.
Now that you are a published author, Bonnie, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Being a published author. just having done something on my bucket list, something I've always wanted to do, and I've done it.
I think children will love this book. There's a great message, and I encourage everyone listening to check it out. Again, this is titled Bonnie the Seagull Who Wouldn't Fly. It's written by B.R. Benson and published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing, so get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or also at traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Bonnie, thank you again for joining me here and telling me all about the seagull who wouldn't fly. I had a really nice time talking with you tonight.
Well, thank you very much, and I had a nice time talking with everyone, and just look up at the sky and imagine Bonnie up there, so she's flying.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.